Wisdom, wisdom, that's the test. Which rival wisdom team is best? Quote definitions and synergies defined by Claude AI, coordinated by Grandpa Lou Valier. Take care and enjoy.
Team 36 improve continuously. Quote definitions, biographical context and synergy analysis to replace hate with motivational education to guidealife.com. Quote 36.1. The circulation of confidence is better than the circulation of money. James Madison 1751 to 1836. Quote definition. In any community, economy, or society, the flow of genuine trust, the confidence that others will deal honestly, honor commitments, and act with genuine goodwill, is more valuable than the flow of money, because trust is what makes money itself meaningful and what sustains the cooperation that wealth requires. Confidence circulates and compounds. Its absence drains everything else of value regardless of material abundance. Quote application. The mission of making America wiser and kinder is fundamentally a confidence circulation project. Every act of genuine wisdom shared, every commitment honored, every human connection built on honest dealing adds to the circulation of confidence in communities that hatred and division have been draining. Madison's principle identifies what the mission is actually building at the deepest level. Not content or followers, but the circulating confidence that genuine community requires. James Madison appears in Team 18 as well, where his principle that philosophy is common sense with big words anchored the civilization layer. Born in 1751 at Montpelier, Virginia, Madison was the most intellectually rigorous of the founders. The primary architect of the Constitution, co-author of the Federalist Papers, and father of the Bill of Rights. His observation about confidence circulating better than money reflects his lifelong engagement with what actually holds republics together. He had designed a government of checks and balances because he understood that human beings required institutional constraints. But he also understood that institutions were ultimately sustained by something money could not purchase: the genuine confidence of citizens in each other and in the frameworks they shared. Without that confidence, no constitutional design could hold. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Invest in building genuine confidence through consistent honest dealing, kept commitments, and authentic relationship as the highest value circulating asset any community possesses. 2. Recognize that confidence, once circulating, compounds in the way that Madison describes. Each honest act increases the likelihood of the next, creating the positive cycle that makes genuine community possible. 3. Apply Madison's principle to the mission. Every genuine wisdom exchange, every honest engagement, every commitment honored is confidence added to circulation, and the mission is ultimately in the business of circulating confidence.
Quote 36.2. Difficulty, my brethren, is the nurse of greatness. William Cullen Bryant, 1794 to 1878. Quote definition. Difficulty is not the enemy of greatness, but its nurse, the condition that feeds and develops it, that creates the character, the capability, and the depth of commitment that only difficulty produces. Greatness nursed in ease is not genuine greatness. The character that emerges from sustained difficulty has been formed in the conditions that make it genuinely great rather than merely impressive in favorable circumstances. Quote application. The continuous improvement that Team 36 describes is nursed by difficulty at every stage. The challenges of changing minds deeply held, of sustaining effort through invisible progress, of building community against the grain of division. All of these are the nursing conditions that develop the genuine greatness of character the mission requires. Bryant's metaphor is both comfort and reframe. The difficulty is not opposing the mission's greatness, but producing it. William Cullen Bryant was born in 1794 in Cummington, Massachusetts, published his poem Thanatopsis at 17, making it one of the most celebrated poetic debuts in American literary history, and went on to become the leading American romantic poet of the early 19th century while simultaneously serving as editor-in-chief of the New York Evening Post for over 50 years, making him one of the most influential journalists and editorial voices of his era. He was a fierce advocate for abolition, labor rights, free trade, and civic reform through the Post's editorial pages. His address from which this observation is drawn was delivered to a gathering facing genuine difficulty, and his appeal to difficulty as the nurse of greatness was the mature reflection of a man who had persisted through his own considerable difficulties, professional, political, and personal, to produce both the poetry and the journalism that defined his era. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Receive difficulty as the nursing condition of the greatness being developed rather than as the obstacle to it. The nurse is not the enemy, but the agent of growth. 2. Recognize that the character being formed through difficulty is qualitatively different from the character that ease produces. Only the difficulty nurse variety holds under the pressure that genuine greatness eventually encounters. 3. Apply Bryant's nursing metaphor to the mission's continuous improvement. Every difficulty encountered is nursing the genuine greatness of character and capability that the mission requires and that easier conditions would never produce.
Quote 30, 6.3. Man can alter his life by altering his thinking. William James, 1842-1910. Quote definition. The primary lever of genuine life change is not external circumstance but internal thought, the quality, direction, and content of what a person habitually thinks. Change the thinking genuinely and sustainedly, and the life changes as a natural consequence. Leave the thinking unchanged, and expect the life to change through other means alone, and expect disappointment. Quote application. This is the psychological foundation of the entire wisdom education mission. The mission works because William James is right. Genuine, sustained change in how people think about human dignity, about difference, about what hatred actually produces. This is what changes how people live in community. Alter the thinking, the life follows. The workbooks, the quotes, the wisdom education are all instruments for exactly this alteration. William James was born in 1842 in New York City, the older brother of novelist Henry James, was educated across Europe and America, trained as a physician, and became the founding figure of American pragmatism, the philosophical tradition that evaluates beliefs by their practical consequences rather than by their correspondence to abstract truth. He also founded experimental psychology in America, introduced the concept of the stream of consciousness, and wrote The Principles of Psychology, 1890, still considered one of the most important works in the field. His observation that life can be altered by altering thinking is both a psychological claim and a philosophical one. Pragmatism holds that thoughts are tools for navigating reality, and better tools produce better navigation. He had spent his career studying the mechanism by which mental states shape behavior, and he had concluded that the alteration of thought, genuinely achieved, was the most reliable available lever of genuine life change. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Invest in genuine thought alteration, the sustained, honest replacement of hateful, fearful, or limiting patterns of thinking with wiser and more generous ones, as the primary lever of genuine life change. 2. Recognize that the thought must be genuinely altered, not merely supplemented with better thoughts that coexist with the old ones. Genuine alteration replaces rather than decorates. 3. Apply James's psychological foundation to the mission. Every piece of wisdom education is an attempt to genuinely alter thinking about human dignity and shared humanity, and when the alteration succeeds, the life it produces is different.
Quote 36.4. To be ignorant of one's ignorance is the malady of the ignorant. Amos Bronson Alcott, 1799-1888. Quote definition. The deepest and most intractable form of ignorance is not the simple absence of knowledge, which at least knows itself as absence and therefore remains open to filling, but the confident unawareness of that absence. The person who does not know what they do not know, and therefore cannot take the first step toward knowing it. This is the malady, not ignorance itself but the absence of awareness that one is ignorant. Quote application. The most resistant target for wisdom education is not the person who knows they don't understand, who can be reached because they know there is a gap. It is the person who doesn't know they don't understand, whose confident ignorance is impervious to the invitation to learn precisely because the invitation appears irrelevant to someone who already knows everything they need to know. Alcott's malady is the specific challenge that the mission must address before any other teaching can proceed. Amos Bronson Alcott was born in 1799 in Walcott, Connecticut, largely self-educated, and became one of the most controversial educational reformers of the American Transcendentalist movement, a teacher who believed in Socratic dialogue and the innate wisdom of children at a time when education meant rote memorization and corporal punishment. He founded the Temple School in Boston in 1834, whose progressive methods attracted enormous attention and then swift condemnation when his Conversations with Children on the Gospels was published in 1836 and was accused of blasphemy and obscenity. The school collapsed. Alcott's reputation was destroyed. He moved to Concord and spent the rest of his life in poverty, sustained by his daughter Louisa May Alcott's earnings as a novelist. His observation about ignorance of ignorance being the malady of the ignorant is characteristic of a man who spent his career observing the difference between students who knew they didn't understand and those who were confident they did, and who found the second category consistently the harder to teach. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Apply Socratic self-examination specifically to the question of what you don't know, because the malady Alcott names is precisely the confident closure of the question before it can be asked. 2. Recognize the malady in others with compassion rather than contempt. The person ignorant of their ignorance is not stupid but specifically unaware of an absence they cannot yet perceive. 3. Apply Alcott's diagnosis to the mission. Creating the awareness of ignorance, the opening that makes learning possible, is often the most important step in wisdom education, because nothing can be taught to someone who already knows.
Quote 36.5, Perseverance is my motto. Sarah Breedlove, Madam C.J. Walker, 1867–1919. Quote definition. The declaration of perseverance as a personal motto is not merely an aspiration but an operating principle. The statement of the one quality that the person who declares it has identified as their primary governing commitment. To make perseverance one's motto is to place it above talent, intelligence, and circumstance as the defining characteristic of how one meets every challenge. Quote application. Sarah Breedlove's one-word motto is the most compressed expression of the continuous improvement philosophy in the collection. Where Victor Hugo identified perseverance as the secret of all triumphs, Breedlove made it her personal motto, the governing commitment that organized everything she did. For the mission, it is the standing instruction. When everything else is uncertain, perseverance is the motto. It is enough. Sarah Breedlove, Madam C.J. Walker, appears in teams 9, 10, 18, 21, 29, and 34 across these 52 teams. Each appearance illuminates a different facet of the most extraordinary life in the collection. Here in Team 36 she delivers the single governing principle that explains how she accomplished everything she accomplished. Perseverance's motto. Not as occasional practice, not as one quality among several, but as the defining commitment around which everything else was organized. She had every reason to stop. The poverty, the discrimination, the physical labor, the obstacles that multiplied at every stage, and she persevered through every one. When asked how, this was the answer. Perseverance is my motto. That was sufficient. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Identify the one governing commitment, the personal motto, that organizes response to every challenge, and make it the standing answer when circumstances suggest stopping. 2. Recognize the power of the motto format, the declaration of a governing principle in advance, before the specific challenge arrives, so that the response is pre-committed rather than decided under pressure. 3. Apply Breedlove's motto directly to the mission. When resistance is strong, progress is invisible, and the temptation to stop is real. Perseverance is the motto, and the motto is the answer.
Quote 36.6. Be not simply good, be good for something. Henry David Thoreau 1817–1862. Quote definition. Goodness that exists for its own sake, passive, self-contained, uninvested in any particular good, is incomplete. The person who is simply good but not good for anything specific has not yet converted the quality of their character into any actual contribution to the world that requires it. Genuine goodness expresses itself in directed, purposeful service. Being good for something means having your goodness actually produce something worth having. Quote application. The continuous improvement this team describes must be good for something, specifically, for the replacement of hatred with wisdom, for the building of wiser and kinder communities, for the service to humanity that gives goodness its direction. Thoreau's instruction upgrades the aspiration from the comfortable general virtue of being a good person to the more demanding specific virtue of being good for something that genuinely matters. Henry David Thoreau appears in teams 12, 15, 18, 23, and 30 across these 52 teams. Here his most practically challenging observation takes the stage. Born in 1817 in Concord, Massachusetts, and educated at Harvard, Thoreau spent his life demonstrating exactly what being good for something looked like in practice. His civil disobedience was good for the anti-slavery movement. His naturalist observations were good for the understanding of Concord's ecology. His Walden was good for every subsequent generation's thinking about deliberate living. He was not simply good. He was relentlessly, specifically, practically good for things that mattered. His instruction to be good for something is drawn from his consistent frustration with people of genuine moral character, who nevertheless failed to direct that character toward any particular good that the world actually needed from them. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Direct the goodness you possess toward something specific that needs it, converting the general quality of your character into actual contribution to a particular good that the world requires. 2. Recognize the gap between being a good person and being good for something. The former is a character quality, the latter is its expression in the world, and only the latter actually changes anything. 3. Apply Thoreau's upgrade to the mission. Be not simply a mission with good intentions. Be a mission genuinely good for the specific good of making America wiser and kinder, with every quality directed toward that particular end.
Quote 36.7. He who stops being better stops being good. Oliver Cromwell, 1599 to 1658. Quote definition. Goodness is not a static achieved state, but a dynamic process of continuous improvement. The person who reaches a level of goodness and stops striving for better does not maintain that level. They begin the gradual decline that stasis always produces. To stop improving is not to hold position but to begin losing it, because goodness maintained without ongoing effort to improve is goodness in the process of becoming less. Quote application. This is the essential principle of Team 36 stated most directly. Continuous improvement is not optional for genuine goodness. It is the condition of it. The mission that reaches a level of effectiveness and stops working to do better has already begun to do worse. The wisdom education that reaches a standard and stops trying to improve it has already started to decline. Stop being better, stop being good. Oliver Cromwell appears in Team 35 as well, where his principle about subtlety and integrity anchored that team's foundation. Here, in Team 36, his most compressed statement of continuous improvement closes the sequence before the final philosophical note. Born in 1599 in Huntingdon and the dominant figure of the English Civil War, Cromwell was known for demanding continuous improvement from his forces. His new model army's discipline and effectiveness came from his insistence that past performance set the floor, not the ceiling, for what was required. His observation that stopping improvement means stopping goodness was not philosophical abstraction, but the operational standard of a military and political commander who understood that resting on achieved quality was the beginning of its loss. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Understand continuous improvement not as an optional excellence, but as the necessary condition of maintaining genuine goodness. Stopping improvement is beginning decline. 2. Apply this standard to every dimension of the mission. The content, the community engagement, the wisdom education, the operational quality, all require continuous effort to improve, or they begin the gradual slide that stasis produces. 3. Use Cromwell's blunt formulation as the standing challenge. In what areas has the mission stopped getting better? Because in those areas, it has already started getting worse.
Quote 36.8. Skepticism is the first step on the road to philosophy. Denis Diderot, 1713 to 1784. Quote definition. Genuine philosophical inquiry, the honest, sustained engagement with what is actually true, begins with skepticism, the willingness to doubt, to question received wisdom, to refuse the comfortable acceptance of what one has been told. Without that initial skeptical refusal to simply believe, the road to genuine knowledge never begins. Skepticism is not the destination but the first necessary step toward it. Quote application. Continuous improvement requires the skepticism to question current approaches honestly, to ask whether the mission's methods, content, and community engagement are actually as good as they could be, rather than accepting current quality as the natural standard. Diderot's first step is the standing invitation to the honest self-questioning that makes improvement possible. Apply skepticism to everything, including what the mission is currently doing, and let the questioning lead toward genuine philosophy, genuine wisdom, rather than comfortable certainty. Denis Diderot was born in 1713 in Langres, France, the son of a master cutler, and became the co-editor and driving force of the Encyclopédie, the massive collaborative project that attempted to compile all human knowledge and, more subversively, to organize it in ways that challenged church authority and aristocratic privilege. He was imprisoned for his materialist philosophy, had the Encyclopédie banned twice by the French authorities, and spent 20 years of his life on a project that his contemporaries found both essential and dangerous. His observation that skepticism is philosophy's first step reflects both his intellectual biography. Genuine skepticism about received authority had been his own starting point, and his philosophical conviction that the comfortable acceptance of inherited belief was the primary obstacle to genuine knowledge. He had demonstrated throughout his career that honest doubt, rigorously pursued, led to genuine understanding. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Apply genuine skepticism as the first step of continuous improvement, doubting current approaches, questioning assumed effectiveness, refusing the comfortable acceptance of current standards as naturally sufficient. 2. Recognize that the honest question, is this actually as good as it could be? Is the beginning of the road that leads to genuine improvement rather than the threat it sometimes feels like. 3. Apply Diderot's first step to the mission continuously. Maintain the skeptical self-questioning that keeps improvement possible, because the mission that never doubts its current methods has stopped the first step of the road that leads to genuine wisdom.
How they work together as a unified philosophy to replace hate with motivational education to guidelife.com. The Improve Continuously Framework. Foundation Layer, Confidence Circulating and Difficulty Nursing Greatness, quotes 1, 2. Madison. Establish confidence as the highest value circulating asset, better than money, compounding through honest dealing, making the continuous improvement of trustworthiness and genuine relationship the most fundamental available investment. Bryant. Provide the honest reframe of the difficulty that continuous improvement inevitably encounters. Difficulty is the nurse of greatness, the condition that produces the genuine character that ease never could. Together, the value being built and the condition that builds it. Madison names what continuous improvement is ultimately producing: circulating confidence, the trust that holds communities together more durably than any material wealth. Bryant names the condition in which that confidence is built: difficulty, which is the nurse that develops the genuine character that easy conditions never require and therefore never produce. Mechanism Layer, Altered Thinking and Diagnose Ignorance, quotes 3, 4. James. Identify the primary lever of genuine improvement, altered thinking, as the mechanism by which life genuinely changes, making thought quality the upstream variable that all downstream improvement depends on. Alcott. Name the specific obstacle that must be addressed before any improvement of thinking can begin, the ignorance of one's own ignorance, as the malady that makes the sufferer specifically unable to take the first step. Together, the mechanism and the obstacle of genuine improvement. James's altered thinking is what actually changes lives. It is the upstream variable, the lever that moves everything downstream. Alcott's diagnosed malady is the specific condition that prevents the lever from being applied. The person who doesn't know they don't know cannot take the first step toward knowing. Alter the thinking, but first, diagnose the ignorance that prevents the alteration. Commitment Layer, Perseverance as Motto and Goodness Directed, quotes 5, 6. Breedlove. Provide the governing personal commitment that organizes everything else. Perseverance as motto, making sustained improvement the pre-committed response to every challenge rather than a situational decision under pressure. Thoreau. Direct that perseverance towards something specific. Be not simply good, be good for something, ensuring that the sustained improvement effort produces actual directed contribution rather than unaddressed general goodness. Together, the commitment and the direction of continuous improvement. Breedlove's perseverance motto is the engine, the pre-committed governing principle that keeps improvement going when circumstances suggest stopping. Thoreau's be good for something direction is the steering, the specific purposeful aim that converts the engine's energy into actual contribution rather than effort without particular destination. Standard layer, stopping better, means stopping good and skepticism as first step, quote 7-8. Cromwell established the absolute standard. He who stops being better stops being good, making continuous improvement not optional excellence, but the necessary condition of maintaining genuine goodness. Diderot, provide the tool that makes continuous improvement possible. Skepticism as philosophy's first step, the honest self-questioning that keeps the improvement process genuinely open rather than self-congratulatorily closed. Together, the standard and the instrument of continuous improvement. Cromwell's blunt formulation makes the standard non-negotiable. Stop improving, start declining. Diderot's skepticism provides the instrument that keeps improvement possible, the honest doubt that questions current quality rather than accepting it as the natural ceiling. The standard demands continuous improvement. Skepticism provides the first step toward it every time.
Free Easy Extra Advantage Math, Spelling and Reading Workbooks you can download for free at stop2think.com or buy at educationstopshate.com. Free Easy Math Wisdom Workbooks with octo repetition to grow math self-confidence. You'll get plenty of repetitive practice of age ranges and averages of our 52 teams of 8 quote authors. Free Easy Alpha Cipher-coded puzzles teach letters, numbers, and phrases using antique wisdoms that encourage and educate. Can you decode this cipher quote of encouragement using either our Learning to Spell or just for fun instructions? And since time is money, practice reading faster with 52 teams of antique rival wisdoms that have passed the test of time to encourage, educate, and entertain generations for centuries. We offer printed versions and timed videos with background music. Sign up for free weekly emails of 52 teams of antique rival wisdom workbooks with easy math, spelling, and reading practice. And, if you'd like to get paid for sharing our wearable wisdoms, keep this in mind. Everyone I know wears a shirt, and most of us change them daily, so change your shirt and change the world. Social equalities are blatantly subliminal antique positive wisdoms repetitively shared without saying a word. This applies to all our wearable shareable wisdoms. Like pretty witty baby onesies and baby tees that you and others will see and read multiple times a day. The same is true with pretty witty kids, but they'll also share these wisdoms with anyone that can read at daycare or school. Youthful truths let your kids gain confidence sharing antique wisdoms with their friends. Imagine them sharing words of wisdom with classmates and teachers. I think, therefore I think tees I wear is a super easy way to share words of wisdom that have passed the test of time. Our social equalities help make us all wiser and kinder with blatantly subliminal messages promoting a more fair and equal opportunity society for all. And don't forget our giftwisdoms.com for birthdays and holidays that makes it easy to share the wisdom with clothing, coffee mugs, and magnets. So do the future a favor by encouraging, educating, and entertaining with words of wisdom that have passed the test of time to make us all wiser and kinder. With wearable wisdoms to fit babies, kids, and adults. You can clothe a whole family, city, or state. Join the 52 of 8 today.